Massachusetts. So that would be great. I've come to know her just a little bit over the last 6 months by participating in a committee that has come together of people from churches all over Central Mass who are just interested in what the opportunities are. And she is one marvelous resource person and coordinator, so easy to work with. So we're glad you're here. Welcome.
Welcome, Barbara. Nice. I have a request before we get started, and that is, does anyone want to read scripture tonight? You want to read scripture? All right. So after this song we have scripture. All right. After this song gets played. Okay. All right. All right. So let's start our worship with one of my favorites, Mr. Mark Miller, and so you'll see that I'm a big fan of Mr. Mark Miller. So, get started. And you are welcome to sing along.
This is a reading from Luke chapter 14, verses 12 to 24 from the New Revised Standard Version, Updated Edition. Jesus said also to the one who had invited him, "When you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers and sisters or your relatives or rich neighbors, in case they may invite you in return, and you would be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, and you will be blessed because they cannot repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." One of the dinner guests, on hearing this, said to him, "Blessed is anyone who will eat bread in the kingdom of God." Then Jesus said to him, So he gave a great dinner and invited many. At the time for the dinner, he sent his servant to say to those who had been invited, "Come, for everything is ready now." But they all alike began to make excuses. The first said to him, "I have bought a piece of land, and I must go out and see it. Please accept my regrets." Another said, "I have bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I am going to try them out. Please accept my regrets." Another said, "I have just been married, and therefore I cannot come." So the servant returned and reported this to his master. And the owner of the house became angry and said to his servant, "Go out at once into the streets and lanes of the town and bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame." And the servant said, "Sir, what you ordered has been done, and there is still room." Then the master said to the servant, "Go out into the roads and lanes and compel people to come in so that my house may be filled. For I tell you, none of those who were invited will taste my dinner."
So in this Luke reading, Luke focuses on banquets, right? That symbol of abundance. As Jesus sits at this event of abundance, he challenges the host that perhaps the table should have been expanded. Jesus notes that generosity is not defined by actions that will be repaid. And the man sitting next to him reacts. Did Jesus just say that God wants all of the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind to recline at this table? How could we possibly do that? And of course, this is a polite occasion, so he doesn't react. He kind of falls back. I picture this is me, but he falls back and he says, well, let's just leave that to God, right? Let's just, blessed is the one who will eat the bread of the kingdom. And Jesus smiles. I throw the smile in too. He smiles. And he tells a story. He tells a story about a banquet that's going to happen no matter who accepts the invitation. Jesus is not going to let this man dismiss his challenge simply because it makes him uncomfortable. He does not let the man dismiss the challenge simply because it overwhelms the host. Jesus knows that the table is big enough, that the wine can continue to flow. Jesus knows that the fear of scarcity is a finite fear in that room of the powerful. It is not what defines God. Nor does it define what is possible when we accept the invitation to the banquet and the work of God as the body, as the church. This is the amazing thing about the banquet. The abundance of the banquet is not the food and the wine. The abundance is created by the guests, those who accept the invitation. The abundance is the experience of accepting the invitation and joining the most amazing banquet of neighbors. Each one bringing themselves to the feast. As Jesus told the host, the system of you scratch my back and I scratch your back is a zero-sum game. It is circular at best. Opening one's heart to the whole of this world, the whole of this creation, experiencing all of the individuals who make up this thing we call humanity, that is the banquet. And that experience includes being there for each other through suffering. It is not that God has given some of us the ability to save our neighbor. It is that God invites us to live and serve each other, to walk together. We are not always able to meet all of the needs, but we can always be present. We can commit to walking together. This is our challenge, to overcome our initial fear of vulnerability, scarcity, and differences, so that we can see our neighbor, the neighbor who does not need to be feared, the neighbor who makes the banquet all the better. And this takes courage. But here's the good news. God provides courage. So let us pray. Ever creating one, you made all nations to inhabit the whole earth. You have walked with your people through the desert times. You have shown yourself and guided those who search. You have cried as we war over lands that are not ours. You have healed peoples who have committed themselves to peace. We thank you for this amazing world of beautiful people. We thank you for the opportunity to live this life in love and grace. We thank you for the eternal hope of your work here on earth. Be with us. Give us the eyes to see our neighbor. Give us the ears to hear the stories of suffering and a heart to be transformed. Give us the mouths to confess and to forgive, and to declare your love far and wide. Please join me in a responsive prayer. We will all say together, Lord, hear our prayer and grant us the courage to act. God of the oppressed, Joseph, Mary, and Jesus ran from persecution to Egypt. Be with those who run away from harm and persecution today. Lord, hear our prayer and grant us the courage to act. God of abundance, this world tells the story of limitations, scarcity, and fear. Show us your abundance. Repeat your invitation to the banquet over and over again. Feed those who have accepted the invitation to the ever-expanding table. Lord, hear our prayer and grant us the courage to act. God of peace, borders are moved with force and held solid with calls for stability. Move your spirit of change over and through the walls we have built between us. May your will for one beloved community be done. Lord, hear our prayer and grant us the courage to act. God of love, the cross has been carried by so many of your children. The inequity of opportunity plagues your people. Release those who are in the bondage of systems that hoard for a few. Weaken the forces that stop all of us from seeing the truth. May the truth reign in your glory. Open hearts to the infinite possibilities before us as a world of hope, peace, and abundance. Lord, hear our prayer and grant us the courage to act. In the name of love, in the name of grace, in the name of hope, we call to you. Let it be so. I bless God every day for Mark Miller. I'm just saying it's pretty good for a Methodist, right?
Well, you couldn't dance to it.
Yeah, you can dance. Yeah, so the first one you can. You can dance to the first one. He was actually at our annual meeting of the Southern New England Conference this year, and it was amazing. So thank you for having me here tonight.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. I get to see where Sterling is.
It's kind of here.
I actually have some friends that live in Sterling. And before I start, I wanted to introduce our guy over there on the couch. So Ben is an intern at, right?
I work at Holy Cross.
Holy Cross, but you're also doing a chaplaincy internship at United Congregational Church in Worcester, which is our home at Wham's. So Ben has been helping me with all of this stuff that you're going to see tonight, and has been helping us at Wham's. So thank you, Ben.
Welcome.
And so I'll introduce myself a little bit too. So my name is Fran Graveson, as we said, and I am the Migrant Family Support Project Coordinator. It took a long time to come up with a title. At Worcester Area Mission Society. Now, what's interesting is that Worcester Area Mission Society was actually founded by a Congregationalist and an industrialist. His name was Ichabod Washburn. It's a great name.
That is a great name.
And what was that?
WPI.
Oh, see, yep, that's it. That's exactly the same guy. And that was in the early 1800s, and he actually created the organization to support newly arrived immigrants who were working in the Worcester factories. He was providing them with food and housing and community. So we have actually come back to our roots by adding this position into Worcester Area Mission Society.
That's great.
My position was is actually paid for through a grant with the Massachusetts Women's Home Missionary Union, another long-standing Congregationalist organization that has been serving the needs of women and children since the 1880s. So it's been difficult to move to the United States and work for a very long time, and there have been organizations helping people to do that for a very long time. My position was created because a group of Central Mass churches were frustrated last fall with their ability to kind of break down walls and be able to serve the families that had moved into the extended shelters that were in the hotels. There was National Guard, there were agencies, there were politicians, there were demonstrators, there were whatever you could find in front of those places where people were trying to live. And so they wanted someone that could help them to kind of build some relationships, coordinate work, and try to have more impact. And that's why my position was created. I have filled the position since March, so it's still just a few months in as we started to do the work. My goal tonight is to provide some clarity, to cut through some of the noise and some of the confusion that can make it difficult to help people. I hope to provide you with some concrete steps of how you can help and where your support fits into the broader picture of immigration. So here's our agenda for the night. We just finished introductions. We're going to do a reading excerpt. Then we're going to do an exercise, a group activity. We're just going to group in little groups. And then we'll have some discussion and then a Q&A session. So simple enough, right? All right. Oh, where'd that go? Oh, that's the introduction. Introducing Fran Graveson. That is our lovely building, if you have not been to it, in Worcester. That is also the home of the United Congregation.
What road is it on? What road is it on in Worcester?
It's on Institute, it's 6 Institute Road, right
I have
near the
seen
Worcester
it.
area.
It's
Yep,
gorgeous.
right near the art museum and everything, yes, absolutely. All right, so there's introduction. So, is there anybody in the crowd that does audiobooks? Kate does
Listens to them?
audiobooks, do audiobooks?
Records them.
Yeah. So, it's been a few years now. I used to do them when they were on CDs for my commute in the 90s. You know, it was like, you have finished this CD, please insert CD number 4, you know, and then you're like, dang, I'm on the Mass Pike, I can't do that. Right? So, but my wife now has gotten into listening to them on an app on her phone, and she doesn't even have to pay for them. She gets to do it through the library, right? Everybody's shaking their heads like, this is awesome, right? Yeah. She has a very long commute, so she loves it. But what this means is if I hitch a ride with her, or we're on vacation driving together, I just get thrown into a book.
Yeah.
Right, and I get to listen to it for maybe it's an hour, maybe it's 3 hours, but that's not a whole book. So I just get pieces and they stick in my head all the time. I've got stories floating around in my head all the time that I never see the end of, but that's okay. But what happened this vacation is I got thrown into the book some of you may have read, The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. And it is the story of a family living in the French countryside during the German occupation in World War II. It really moved me when I heard this book on vacation after doing the work I had been doing for 4 months. And so I wanted tonight to share a couple of excerpts of that, and then we're going to use that as our group exercise. Okay? All right. So we start with Isabel and her father at their bookshop in Paris. Do you hear that? Isabel sat up. There was a strong sound in the bookshop, to be sure. Dust fell from the ceiling. The bookcases clattered slightly, making a sound like chattering teeth. Shadows passed in front of the entrance, hundreds of them. People? So many people? Papa went to the door. Isabel slid off of her stool and followed him. As he opened the door, she saw a crowd running down the street, filling the sidewalks. What in the world, Papa muttered. Isabel pushed past Papa, elbowed her way into the crowd. A man bumped her so hard she stumbled, and he didn't even apologize. More people rushed past. What is it? What's happened? She asked a florid, wheezing man who was trying to break free of the crowd. The Germans are coming into Paris. We must leave. I was in the Great War. I know. Isabel scoffed. Germans in Paris? Impossible. We must go home, Papa said, locking the bookshop door. It can't be true. The worst can be true, Papa said grimly. Stay close to me, he added, moving into the crowd. Isabel had never seen such panic. All up and down the street, lights were coming on, automobiles were starting, doors were slamming shut, people screamed at one another and reached out, trying to stay connected in the melee. Isabel stayed close to her father. The pandemonium in the streets slowed them down. The metro tunnels were too crowded to navigate. They had to walk all the way home. It was nearing nightfall when they finally made it to the apartment. Isabel followed her father into the living room and went past him to the window where she lifted the blackout shade, peering out. From far away came a droning sound. As it grew louder, the windows rattled like ice in a glass. She heard a high whistling sound, only seconds before she saw the black flotilla in the sky, like birds flying in formation. German airplanes flying over Paris. The whistling sound increased, became like a woman's scream, and then somewhere, a bomb exploded in a flash of eerie bright light, and something caught fire. That's how quickly life can change. It's estimated that as many as 10 million people ran, packed some belongings, or maybe not, just ran ahead of the German invasion. Men, women, children abandoned their homes, moved by car, bicycle, foot, south to get away from the German tanks, airplanes, and troops. Many of those caravans were indiscriminately attacked and bombed as they fled. 10 million people displaced in their own country. Traumatized, starving, injured, dying. 1/4 of France's population was displaced. How overwhelming is that? So before we go on, I have to say that I believe in God moments. I know we've moved on from the prayer and the worship section of tonight. I apologize for bringing faith into my life. A smile. But I have to note that after just a few months working with the refugees and listening to this scene, it made me tear up. And when God touches me like that, I have learned to keep listening. So even though my wife had gone sound asleep on the car ride, I kept the book going. And so I want to play one more, or read one more little snippet, which talks about the perspective of Vianne, who was a middle class teacher and mother who was holding her family together while her husband had been taken to the front lines to fight. Vianne approached her front gate. Before she reached it, a trio of women appeared as if sculpted out of the shadows. They stood clumped together in the road just behind her gate. An old woman, dressed in rags, held the others close to her. A young woman with a babe in arms, and a teenage girl who held an empty bird cage and a shovel. Each looked glassy-eyed and feverish. The young mother was clearly trembling. Their eyes were filled with defeat. The old woman held out dirty hands, empty hands, and said, "Can you spare some water?" Vianne opened the gate. "Of course. Would you like to come in? Sit down, perhaps?" What we would all do, right? The old woman shook her head. "We are ahead of them. There's nothing for those in the back." Vianne didn't know what the woman meant, but it didn't matter. She could see that the women were suffering from exhaustion and hunger. Just a moment. She went into her house, packed them some bread and raw carrots and a small bit of cheese. All that she had to spare. She filled a wine bottle with water, it is in France, and returned, offering them the provisions. "It's not much," she said. "It's more than we've had since Tours," the young woman said. The young mother made a moaning sound and tightened her hold on the baby. "Go inside," the old woman said to Vianne. "Lock your doors." But the ragged trio backed away. And then Vianne saw the mass of black shapes moving across the field and coming up the road. As they neared, the miasma of black separated, peeled into forms. She saw people walking, limping, coming toward her. Some were pushing bicycles or prams or dragging wagons. Dogs barked, babies cried. There was coughing, throat clearing, and whining. They came forward and came forward, relentlessly moving closer, pushing one another aside, their voices rising. Vianne took a deep breath. I cannot help them all. She rushed into her house and locked the door behind her. Inside, she went from room to room, locking doors and closing shutters. The house began to shake. The windows rattled. The shutters thumped against the stone exterior. Dust rained down from the exposed timbers of the ceiling. Someone pounded on the door. There were dozens of people in her yard, mostly women and children, moving like a pack of hungry wolves. What if the door doesn't hold? The scene still strikes me, just right in the heart. Vianne's emotion seems so familiar, so contemporary. The initial compassionate response to the strangers, and then the absolute fear that their needs would overtake her comfortable life and the safety of her family. We hear a similar emotional struggle in our political and social conversations about immigration. Right?
Yeah.
We want to help. We want to heal suffering. And we fear the need is more than our country can provide without destabilizing our systems and infrastructure. Our instinct of scarcity kicks in when we are overwhelmed. The survival mode takes control. That fear that makes us vulnerable to manipulation, paralyzes us from action, and sometimes causes us to go into complete denial. Vianne will find out in the morning that the person who was banging on her door was her sister from Paris, Isabel. So I want us to just take a moment in groups to just kind of process what we just heard. And so what we want to do is, if we can break up into small groups, so you have time to talk to each other, and pick who you are. Well, I'm not going to let you pick. I'm going to have to say A's, because nobody will want to be the A. But so one group will be A, which means you are Isabel, and one group will be B, which means that you are Vianne. Okay? And we just have a simple question. What do you need? You are Isabel in Paris. What do you need? You are Vianne in your yard or hiding in your house. What do you need? And then we'll just do that for about 5-10 minutes, and then come back together and just chat about it for a little bit, and then we'll move on to the facts and figures and all the good stuff that I've got for you tonight. All right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, so get together with 4 or 5 people, and then we'll assign A's and B's once you're kind of in groups. Isabel, leaving Paris.
Yeah, they really are not.
We went
We
in
have
different
that
direction. We were discussing our feelings over here.
Well,
The assignment
I
had
knew
been
that would
yours.
happen, and then, you're on the couch. So, yeah.
We are taking care of our needs.
So for the feeling group, what's number 2?
Safety.
Safety.
Pack that, or do you?
No, it's an insurance company, Patty. Sass.
What else does Isabel need?
I went with reassurance, which actually I would say
Assurance, not insurance.
reassurance that things are going to be okay, that she is going to be okay, that there is something on the other side of this, that is not just more this.
Would we have something similar, which is hope?
Hope.
Oh, they used to board those.
Couch, we got a couch.
Yes.
You had,
Big food.
which was Janet, community, or companionship.
Companionship.
Someone to work together with, and provide both emotional support and maybe
Take your teddy bear.
Yeah, that's
A
what
hug.
a
A hug.
shared story, a
Yeah.
shared experience.
It changes the experience for sure, right? Absolutely.
Food and water.
Food and water.
Well, with the companionship also is, you take the people that you love, you take everybody that you can, that,
Loved ones.
yeah. So maybe there's also a
Neighbors.
dog.
Neighbors.
Neighbors. The dog. We heard in the reading that people took, the dogs with them.
I know. I mean, how could you not?
Well, they're cool, they're good, also guarding. Someone else comes in here.
You would, for sure.
Will let you.
Not my dog.
My daughter's looking at it.
All right, so this is Isabel. Is it okay for me to put this on the wood?
Yes.
I'm a rule follower, Robin.
I know, you're doing well.
Isabel. The end. See everything that was happening in our car while my wife was snoring and sound asleep on the other side, and I was processing all of this as we drove to Maine.
She wasn't driving, was she?
No, she's not. So what does VN need?
Strong door.
A strong door.
She's on the, she wants, oh, okay. Yeah, she's on the side.
Yeah, she's the one at our house.
It needs information.
She needs information.
Courage.
Courage.
What the hell's happening?
She needs to protect her family.
Protect her family.
She also needs reassurance.
She needs help.
She needs to hide.
Oh, hi.
She needs a plan.
Man.
Money.
Compassion.
Abundance.
Ooh, say more. A view of abundance
She
or?
wants to have
or-
more to give away.
Oh,
Yeah.
she
can only
needs
give up.
abundance,
would-
okay,
Yeah,
abundance.
if she had more, she would give more.
If you ever did one of those word maps of my sermons, this would be like the big word in the middle, it would take over the whole map. Anything else?
If she can, then find out what her neighbors are up to, and she can plan something together with them.
So, yeah, so neighbors too, huh? Oh, we live so far away from each other, sometimes we don't know what our neighbors do. Excellent. Give yourselves a round of applause. Very good.
find it interesting that nobody said gun.
In this crowd?
Well, I mean, it is the crowd. No, but
Yeah? For either of them, huh?
Yeah. No, because a gun wouldn't really help.
We said it over here.
we said it, but it was like, I'm not
Just
gonna
put it
do
out there.
I'm not putting it on the
All right, all right.
Well, the problem with a gun is you know, how many bullets do you have? And if you have 1,000 people in your front door, it doesn't matter. It's just gonna,
And yeah, there's more.
and these might be your neighbors, these might be people that you know. And
She would have
then,
shot her sister.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, how
Well,
do you?
and having a gun in a hand is a good opportunity for somebody else to suddenly have your gun in their hands. So, like,
Yeah. You know, I recommend the book. They soon find out that it's the Gestapo that takes over their town that's really the enemy, right? And
yeah.
really changes their lives. So I wanted to do and stop and do this exercise, not because it's really accurate for us to put ourselves in the space of Isabel, right? We cannot understand the trauma of war, unless we've actually lived through it. And for most citizens of the United States, they have not seen war at their doorstep. But it is good to humbly feel for a moment what we can imagine. To open ourselves up to the vulnerability of such a shocking change in life so quickly. Most of us in this room can relate more authentically to Vienne. That feeling in your stomach when you hear this story. That conflict, that internal conflict, that fear that you're about to lose what you love, what makes you feel safe in the world. And you know, and that conflict inside of you of compassion and fear at the same time. Yeah. So, as we consider those emotions, I want us to also realize that the immigration system in the United States has been built to meet the needs of Vienne. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's been built to meet our needs of security with a conflicted compassion and our fears, that heart conflict. Before starting this work, I didn't really say that out loud. I probably knew it somewhere, but I didn't say it out loud. You know, we think that the system is based on helping Isabel, the system to help those in need. And of course, it helps many people, many people. And our immigration policies, procedures hold that tension that Vienne held in her yard. We can't possibly help them all. So, as we do this work tonight, as we talk about that work, I just like to bring that to the surface. You know, and just understand that, and understand it in the overall conversations that we have about immigration. It's not judgment of policy and politics. That's not our purpose here tonight. But I think that it's important to keep that in mind when we think about how we can help and who we're helping and what the situation has been in the last year in Worcester and Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Okay? All right, cool. So, I used to be an accountant, and therefore I had Ben put some numbers together. Ben's a data analyst, so he's much better at this than an accountant is. Before we get to the numbers though, let's go through some terms that have gotten really confusing lately. And I can't even say that I'm gonna make it clear for you for the rest of your life either, because some of these terms have been changing as we go, and depending on what context the word is used, the definition can change also. But we're just gonna give some general understandings of these terms because you hear them all of the time, and it does help to provide some context. Okay? The first word is migrant. Migrant can be, I'm going to say, people moving from one place to another, migrating. We often, I'm going to say we, because often in my childhood, I would hear this as migrant worker. Someone that was moving from place to place to work. My aunt and uncle owned a huge commercial farm in Minnesota, and they always had campers in the back of their house who were all the families that would come every year to do the crops and to do the harvest, right? And they would go back home after the harvest. So they were migrant workers. So that word migrant has been, touched with that throughout our history. But it also can just simply mean anyone that is moving and we don't know what category they are. We just know that they're moving, right? And so that's the word, the way I use the word, is if I don't know what the situation actually is, what has caused the person to move, where they come from, why they're here, whether they're here temporarily or permanently or whatnot, I just use the word migrant for people moving. Okay? The second word is something that in the United States is tied to specific laws. Right, so an immigrant in the United States is someone that's going through our immigration process, and our immigration process is for permanent, long-term residency here in the country. It's for someone who is going to stay here. They're not here temporarily, right? And in the United States, there's basically two ways to come into the United States. Either the family unification process, so you have family that already lives here and they sponsor you and bring you in, or you have some sort of a job skill and you come in based on one of our different work visas, one of our different green card programs. I worked for Hanover Insurance for multiple years and I outsourced a whole bunch of work while I was there, and I constantly was working with those different green card statuses and bringing software engineers and all kinds of people into the country. So that is the immigrant. That's what an immigrant is. It's normally a person that's permanently come to live here, but is not coming because they were in any kind of violence or any kind of a bad situation at home. They're here to better their lives and come through in the specific programs that we have set up. A refugee is someone who has been forced from their home. They need to leave their home country and they are unable or unwilling to return due to persecution, war, violence, or other serious threat. Refugees are granted a legal status before they arrive in the host country. So this is a big important part about refugees also, right? So they were asylees when they left their country, and they probably went to the country that's like bordered their country, right? They were just running, like Isabel. And they might be in a refugee camp or they might be in some kind of temporary housing. But then they started the process and went through a very long process to become a refugee in the United States. All their paperwork gets approved and everything is all set up for them before they get on the plane and come here. Okay, and then they will be resettled through a refugee resettlement agency. And so that's a refugee in the United States. Okay? The next one is an asylum seeker. Now, an asylum seeker is also leaving their country because of war, persecution, threat of death, threat of imprisonment, or any other abuse, right? Same reasons as refugees. And our asylum seeking program requires that they be on US soil or at a port of entry before they apply for asylum. Okay, so this is what you see happening at the border. People use their cell phones. The Biden organization has set up an app on a cell phone. You schedule your appointment and you wait months sometimes to have that that interview. And then you go in, you go face to face with a human being, you tell them the story, and they decide whether or not you have probable cause to be an asylum, to get asylum or not. If they think that you've met that lower threshold, they sign the papers and you come into the United States as an asylum seeker. It takes years to actually get asylum. But while you're here going through all of that process, telling your story over and over again, possibly paying $5,000 to $10,000 to a lawyer, and living in the United States, you are given the authority to work and the authority to travel. Okay? And you, in Massachusetts, also are helped with resettlement services with a resettlement agency like a refugee, because you are a refugee. Now the other difference also in the program is that you can't just say, I come from a country that is dangerous and therefore give me asylum. The asylum is based on your specific situation. You have to prove that you would be imprisoned, you would be killed, your family has been threatened. And you need to tell that story over and over again during the application process to get asylum. Okay. Excuse me. The next one is temporary protected status. The TPS program actually does not bring anyone into the country. The temporary protective status stops people from being deported. Okay, so you have to be in the country when we declare that your country is too dangerous and we're going to set up a TPS.
You need something to drink.
Yeah, could I get some water? I forgot to bring that
Thanks,
water, I
Jen.
said I was gonna bring that. So when the government, the US government says that we are gonna protect people from Haiti with TPS, they set a date. And only people who were living in the United States at that time and can prove it will be approved for that TPS status, and therefore do not need to leave the country. Okay? I think there's confusion on that. That's how it works. The other program, which has been in place since the 1930s, is the humanitarian parole program. This program is controlled by the administration in relation to who are parolees at any given time. We currently have just a few countries that are under the parole system. We have 16 countries that are under TPS. We just have a handful of countries that are under the parole system. Haiti being one of them, Venezuela being one of them, Cuba being one of them, and Nicaragua being one of them. This program means that people from that country can come into the country if they have a sponsor. So they have to have a family member or someone else that is willing to legally sign and take responsibility for them. And the parolee system, or the Parolee Act, only lasts for 1 to 2 years. So they are temporary residents. They are not permanent residents. Now, if you come in as a parolee, you can then go and see a immigration lawyer and see if you are actually, you could actually get asylum. And if you do have family here, you can start the process for family unification. So you can change your immigration status once you're here, but you came in under the parolee system, and your parole will only last for 1 to 2 years, depending on what country and what program and all that. So I'm going to stop for 1 second, and are there any questions about just these terms?
I don't know if it's the right time, but so the Haitians that we're talking about tonight, what category do they typically fall into?
Yeah, thank you so much. So we have like 700, over 700,000 people from Haiti that live in the United States today as permanent residents. Some are US citizens. So we have a large population. They're like the 15th most popular, or something like that, population in the United States from foreign-born. So there are a lot of Haitians, people from Haiti, that have come here through the unification process. Their families have sponsored them, and they've come. We have caps on that. So we own, actually, we're gonna do numbers in a minute, so let me not do numbers. But, so some are there because of that. Some of them came in through the parole system because they have family already here, or someone that could sponsor them already here. And then some have also been able to say that they actually do have a reason for asylum, because they're personally in trouble in Haiti. Right? I will also say that there is a population that may have come into the country on a travel visa or on a work visa or on something, and they were supposed to be temporary. Some of them may even have come in without papers and just crossed the border. But once they're in, they do qualify for TPS. It doesn't change their immigration status, but it stops them from being deported. But I will say that the majority of people that we're currently dealing with in Worcester and in central Massachusetts, many of them have come through the parolee program. And what has happened in the parolee program, and the government is fixing it a little bit, is that even though they were sponsored, some of the family sponsoring people, or the people that have sponsored some of them, have become overwhelmed in not being able to help them anymore. So then they've fallen back into our shelter systems and stuff, because
Yeah.
Nobody expected that it was gonna take, a year to find a apartment, or or get settled, and no one expected that the system was gonna be so overwhelmed that it was gonna take time to get your work permits and all that kind of stuff. But that's why Massachusetts asked the federal government to do that work permits and things like that, so that they could all just start working, get apartments, and leave the shelter system. And that's working. It is working. It's still slow, but it is working. Any other questions?
So getting here, either their sponsors pay for it, or they have the means to get themselves here. I mean, there's nobody,
Yeah, or they're walking across the border, yeah.
I mean, thinking Haiti, obviously, they
Yeah.
Take a
either
boat.
be in a boat or.
Yeah, so they're coming
Yeah.
sometime. So we'll talk about the Haitian story in a minute. But I would agree that right this minute, a lot of the people who are landing in Logan and stuff like that are people from Haiti who have just flown directly over to Massachusetts because they have family and they have some connection here. So it's estimated that about 121 million people are displaced in the world right now. So that's the big word that I used, migrant. There are 121 people moving, okay? Officially, there's about 30-something million that are in the refugee program definition by the UN. So the refugee program, what do we call it? The Refugee Convention of 1951 was signed by a whole bunch of countries, and it defined what a refugee is, and it also defined what the rights of a refugee are. And so all the countries that signed that refugees have the right to housing, work, and education while they are displaced, so that they can lead a dignified and independent life. And so that's the UN refugee program. And there are 30-something million in that right now. 69% of those 30 million come from these 6 countries. This is 2021 data. Hasn't changed all that much from 2024.
But this isn't necessarily in the United States, this is worldwide.
No, this is worldwide, people displaced.
Yeah.
So this is where the majority are coming from. These, sorry with the microphone. These are the top 10 host countries that have taken refugees in.
Damn, we're not even on there.
We're not on there.
That's embarrassing.
It's not that embarrassing, because we'll talk about it, but from the refugee program, we're not on there, and look who's there, like Turkey has taken 3.8 million people as of
Well,
2021.
Colombia's getting a lot from Venezuela, Turkey's getting a lot from Syria, so like it does make sense.
You can see the neighbors, right? You
Yeah.
can see the neighbors. So the refugee program in the United States sets a cap every year of how many refugees we ask for from the UN, so to speak, that come through the refugee programs. And for 2024, it will be 125,000.
That's a drop.
That's a high number compared to the last 5 years. This number went as low as, I believe, 25,000 in 2020.
But like, for perspective, that's like 1/1000th of the global
It's-
issue.
Very small in the refugees situation. It's, we average about 100. If you went over a long period of time, we usually average about 100,000 refugees. But where we focus, or where the most people come into our program, is we are the #1 country in the world in accepting asylum seekers. Okay, and so asylum applications can go as high as 500,000 a year. That's where we are now, when everybody's, saying, oh, we're overwhelmed, because we're up at the 500,000 mark. And then the parolee program, that's where we really have made a change in the last couple of years. It's a program that's been around since the 1930s. It's something that the decision is made at the border. The agent decides, are you a parolee or not? And in the last 2 years, we've really jumped those numbers. So in 2022, we had 1 million parolees. In 2023, we had 1 million parolees. And before that, it was not even in that ballpark. In 2022, the majority, the highest number of people that came through the parolee were Ukrainians. And in 2024, the highest number were Haitians. Okay, so it's a system that reacts to something,
Yeah.
right? And it's temporary. People are only allowed to stay 1 to 2 years unless they change their immigration status along the way. Okay? So these are the numbers of the United States immigration. A country that is it 340 million, 400 million?
It's 330 million.
330 million. These are our immigration numbers, okay? And you'll hear a lot about what is the immigrant population. So that is what is the cumulative over the last 200 years, how many immigrants that we brought in. Who is foreign born right now in the United States? We are at 14%. So 14% of our population right now is foreign born, and that is historically a peak. The last time we had that many was the turn of the century, the Industrial Revolution. Right? So I love that Ben said to me, well, that must mean that we're moving on to a new industrial revolution somehow, right? There's something on the horizon for us. But I love that.
We're in the middle of the tech revolution.
And the baby boomers are retiring. Okay, so I'm running a little late, but I do want to stop and talk about this because it makes the story of the Haitian population complicated. We all remember the earthquake in 2010. So at that time, many people left Haiti. And some came here, and that's why we have a large population already before this time period. But many of them went to South America because Brazil was in the midst of building their Olympic stadiums and having this huge economic boom in 2010. I used to have salespeople call me all the time in 2010 asking me if I was going to outsource my work to Brazil because they were in a huge economic upswing. And they accepted the people from Haiti in with warm welcomes and put them to work. And then Brazil crashed. And the nativism came in, and the Haitians were no longer welcome, and they couldn't feed themselves. They moved over to Chile. We know recently that Chile has also collapsed economically. And again, the people from Haiti were Can you imagine this? Like we talked about Isabel. Can you imagine since 2010, your family has been unstable? You've been moving from foreign country to foreign country just looking for a job, looking to feed yourself?
And changing languages.
And changing languages. I'm glad you brought that up because when we do the diaper distributions, we can find, if we can find people who can speak Spanish, we can talk to people from Haiti a lot, you know, most of them, because they made this trip. So then, when they couldn't find anything going on in in Chile, they started to move up to the United States and look for real stability. And that was about the same time that the economy here was doing well. So, but it does hit me, like we have an immigration system that follows good economies, like it makes people follow good economies, but that's a whole nother story. So that means that these families have gone through the Darien Gap. If anybody knows what that means, it's an area that is all jungle and uphill. is the film that I've seen, it's all uphill. And they literally have to walk through the jungle, the Darien Gap. It's a very dangerous place. And that's where they have to pay someone to get them through it safely. So thousands of dollars, again, out of their pockets to get through the Darien Gap. Come through Central America and Mexico and get to our border. And they're obviously asking for asylum. Right? So the reason that we opened up the parole system is because in the parole system, people don't have to come in through Mexico. They can get on an airplane and fly to an airport and declare being the parolee system, right? And we know that we're connecting them to a family so that they can start their life faster than coming in without any connections, right? And so the parole program was actually a lever, what's the word I want? An outtake, opening the faucet in a different place so that we could relieve the pressure at the border.
Yeah, the pressure.
And the asylum seeking, okay? And so I just want to tell that story, that the story of the Haitian people is just so complicated and tragic. Tragic just in these last 10 years alone, 13 years. So that brings us to Massachusetts' story. So because we do have a high population of people from Haiti already living in Massachusetts, a lot of the families, when they ran from Haiti or came up from Chile, were looking for their families in Massachusetts. So we did have a large amount of them come here for resettling. I believe last year we had 18,000 asylum applications in Massachusetts. So just think about that, 18,000. We had 3,600 immigrant, asylum seeker, parole families show up in our emergency shelter system and ask for shelter. So many more came, but 3,600 didn't have the right connections or maybe had lost the ability for their family to help them or something had changed or whatnot and ended up asking for shelter in our system. Our system normally has the ability to hold 3,500 families. So overnight, basically, almost, we doubled the number of people that wanted shelter, that needed shelter, in the middle of a housing crisis. In the middle of the pandemic causing a bunch of people to be evicted, in the middle of just stuff that was here, and the people that came from Haiti basically came and were victims of the problems that already were here,
Mhm.
right, of not being able to find a place to live. So our state spent $857 million to increase, right, we doubled basically the amount of money we spent on sheltering last year. And that's where we get the hotels, the temporary places, and we get all of this noise. So you have a system, and again, I just want to talk about numbers, right? There are 7 million people that live in Massachusetts, and our shelter system is limited at 3,500 units. So we raised it to 7,500, and that's where we've been for this last year and a half. I get on a call every other week with Ori, who is the Office of Refugee and Immigrants in Massachusetts. They do a group call with all nonprofits and agencies and stuff to just give updates every other Wednesday. And the shelter numbers are coming down. We are below the 7,500 right now. And some of this is calming down a bit, and people are leaving the hotels and finding apartments. And so we're through the real peak of all of this, unless another peak happens. I saw on the news last week that some gang went into a rural village in Haiti. They've never attacked rural villages before, came in on boats and killed 80 people and took over the village, right? So this isn't over in Haiti. But yeah, so it is coming down. We have about, 352 families currently in the in the hotels and motels in our area, in the Worcester area. Those are not all foreign-born people. Those are also people that simply needed homes that were residents of Massachusetts. So those are, again, the numbers of what we saw in the news, what was happening.
And Fran, that expansion, that's all really probably hotels and motels, right? They didn't build a bunch of new shelters.
Correct.
Everybody wants one in their backyard, from what we saw in the news, right? So
Right.
it's all.
And the state legislature has told the governor, you're not getting this money next year. So that all goes away in June of 2025. So their goal is to get people out and not to use that many units again. They want to get back down to their 3,500. It was probably not enough to begin with, correct?
Right. But I mean, the housing crisis is just insane.
Exactly. So, yeah, so that's that story. I also just like to throw out there that long-term immigration does not cost us money. It costs money to help people to get here, and it does cost money to settle them and to have things that like just happened, the $856 million that we just spent. But in general, our immigrant population, people who are born not in the United States, have a spending power of $48 billion in this country. They pay $18.4 billion in taxes, and they contribute $6.2 billion in Social Security. Some of them will never see that Social Security because they don't qualify for it. And even for people who are undocumented, they've paid $1.1 billion in taxes, right? Because they get work permits and they work, and they pay taxes on it.
Those numbers are not limited to Massachusetts, though, are they?
I'm sorry, you're right.
Yeah,
This is,
national.
Well, it's the
No, this
source-
is
the source
Massachusetts, right?
Massachusetts, the
no,
bottom.
this is Massachusetts. This is a Massachusetts source. Yeah, this
It is,
Massachusetts.
okay, thank you.
And again, just the positives, not an overwhelm. I like to try and just get rid of the overwhelming feeling, right? Each year, the U.S. population needs an additional 370,000 people to keep our population level the same, our labor market the same. And we're not doing that, right? So we need 370 people to decide to live in the United States in order for our labor market to stay at the level it currently is. And you can see that from this chart that our total labor market it changed by 12% in the last 15 years. US born changed by 10%. And lawful immigration was 29%. And then you see that the unauthorized immigrant or undocumented or however else, I often think of them as the migrant workers. I don't think all of them stay. But they make up 8%, and their percentages didn't change, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that when people say that the immigration process is out of control, it's not out of control. We're doing what we need to do as far as the labor market goes, right? Contributions. Immigrants account for 25% of our personal care aides, 38% of our home health aides, 16% of our nurses, and 25% of our entrepreneurs. Okay, so it's,
That doesn't even count the number that are working in mental health. Well, considering our aging population, how important are those roles?
Right, and the mental health housing supports where people were going out to the homes, helping people stay in their own homes. That is probably a much larger percentage that are immigrants. Most of the direct support workers are.
yeah, and then when they say home care, I don't know if they mean all of that, yeah, yep. So, the politics regarding immigration levels and any policy, and that's not our topic tonight. The statistics just place the context of immigration in our broader society and the impact on our state in the last year, right? It seems like it's very costly, very this, but if we look at the long term, there are benefits on the other side of those costs, right? Not to mention that we helped people like Isabel, right? We helped people that have just gone through huge trauma and were in danger of dying. And we helped them. So, I want to just get into a little bit of how we help people. That's all right. And I do agree that I'm running a little late, but we're going to do this and still give you some Q&A time. So I like to break needs out into 3 phases of the situation that we want to talk about, right? First, you have the actual arrival. The newly arrived, they hit the ground, they're here. Then, in their first 1 to 2 years, they're transitioning into their new life, and there's different needs, right? And then I just want to spend some time a little at the end, just talking about community acceptance, which is a broader, more subtle topic than direct needs, right? But at arrival, shelter is the #1 thing. We literally have people that land at Logan Airport on a Friday afternoon. The shelter system has already closed for the weekend, and they're just on the street, looking up at the big skyscrapers of Boston and not knowing what to do. And we have churches and nonprofits that literally drive from bus station to train station to Logan looking for these people that look like this, picking them up and bringing them to some nonprofit shelters. We have churches that have taken rooms like this and made them into bedrooms, right, and dormitories. And that's happening today.
You need a shower.
Need a shower, need whatever, right? We have homes. We have a lot of people that will do that in their home. It's just for the weekend, short periods of time. The bus comes and picks them back up. This is all through Brazilian Workers Center. They will actually do the transportation and everything. They need immediate needs. Today, we had our diaper distribution at Worcester Area Mission Society, which we do with Jillian Phillips, and I'm going to talk about her in a minute. She is the director of New Americans at Worcester. I love that title. And she works through Friendly House. And we host her every other week to give out diapers and clothing and whatever else people donate. We gave away 818 packs of diapers today between 10 and 12. 2 hours. We helped 190 families. Immediate needs. legal assistance. Barbara went, and Jeff went too, Jeff had to leave, to the TPS legal clinic. We have held 3 of them, and I say we because Jillian does all the work, and then I just claim all the glory for it. But Jillian and some lawyers in Worcester and nonprofits in Worcester hold these legal clinics on Saturdays for Haitian families to get their TPS applications filled out. And over the 3 clinics that they've done, they have processed over 500 applications. Free, bona fide, however lawyers say that. But they have to sit at this place, Barbara has seen this, they have to sit in this room for 8 hours while the lawyers get through their applications, and it's horrendous. So as church, we bring snack packs. We talk to people, we play with kids. We try to make it as humane as we possibly can, and I know that Sterling has helped us to do that. You guys have donated it to it. You have physically been there, and I appreciate that. And those TPS clinics are happening throughout the state now. Opportunities to volunteer if people want to do that work. So another opportunity to help. Permanent housing, we've already talked about it. The housing crisis is horrendous. Finding an apartment when you are working at an entry-level job in our cities and towns is impossible, right? And so there are programs that the state has a program that is called Home, I always want to say Home Share, and that's a different program, so Home Base, which guarantees the rent so that a landlord can feel more comfortable renting to somebody that's coming out of a shelter. I know you all know people that own property, you know landlords, you know people that do this, right? Please do take one of the flyers, encourage people to look into this program and help people to find affordable apartments. The state is taking the risk out of it. There's still a lot of paperwork, it's the state. But it's an opportunity to help. ESL is a huge opportunity right now, teaching people to speak English. I have 4 different organizations that I work with right now who are ramping up and trying to do English classes. You do not need to speak the other language in order to teach English. There are software packages, curriculums, books that you just go through. And of course, there's always Google Translate. But you don't, that was like a big revelation to me. I thought I had to speak the language in order to teach them the English, right? And you don't, you just need to be able to speak English, and we all can do that in this room, I believe. So there are opportunities for online classes, there are opportunities for one-on-one classes, there are opportunities to just help in classrooms that already have teachers. And so if anyone is interested in that, please let us know. And then I'm going to talk about community acceptance at the end when we talk about it. But that is about building trusting relationships, people feeling safe in your community, and honoring all of our rights to live fully as who we are, right? So who do we work with? So Worcester Area Mission Society has been trying to build the relationships, because this work is not stuff that is like fly-by. You can't like fly in, drop some stuff off and leave. This is stuff where people need to trust you as an organization. They need to trust you as the person that they're going to have work with people. And so we've been trying to build those relationships with organizations so that churches can come to us, and then we can show you all these wonderful organizations that already trust us and already have a relationship. But then we also are going to encourage you to build a relationship with them. Pick something that you all feel passionate about, feel a calling to do, and build a deeper relationship with an organization that does that. So the first group of people that we work with are the quasi-government agencies that are our refugee shelter system, right? So it's a mixture. I don't know if anybody knows this, worked with the shelter system, but the way all of this works, it's a mixture of government agencies and nonprofits who get contracts from the state to do certain things for them, right? So it's a mixture, and we work with all of them. So the resettlement agencies, the agencies that resettle refugees are REAC, Accentria, and Jewish Family Services Metro West, right? They have also been extended to have contracts to help people to get out of the hotels and to help asylum seekers to also get through the process. So they have caseworkers, case managers, and they have services where they're helping people to get through. Then there are the shelter organizations themselves. So in Worcester, we have CMHA, Central Mass Housing Alliance, and we have SMOC, which is more in the Metro West area, but they also are managing the hotel in North Carolina. So they are managing the actual shelters. They also are helping people to get out of the shelters to do job training programs for the state and do all of that. And so we find them to be absolutely great partners. They are happy to help us, to tell us like what are the immediate needs of the people living in the shelters, and then also how can we help them to move to the next step, right? Job training, ESL classes, all of that. One of the churches that's in the group, Edwards Church in Framingham, is paying for the scholarships for a bunch of people that are in the SMOC shelters. They're paying for them to go to ESL classes at a place called Hospitality Common Inc., which is a full semester of English classes. And so they're paying the tuition, SMOC is providing the transportation, and we have families starting to take ESL classes from the hotel with this organization. So these are the partnerships that we're trying to build and we're seeing happen. I'll mention two. Jewish Family Services is also trying to move people out of the hotels, and they are happy to have a church come in and sponsor a family and help them. It could be as little as setting the apartment up for them, just being the manual labor that walks the stairs with the couches, or making a financial donation that helps them with their first down payments or any of that, or helping the family to get to the medical appointment from their new apartment, or get the kids enrolled in school, or any of that stuff. So a lot of times refugee programs say that you need to take the family in and have them for 1 or 2 years and you're responsible for everything that happens to them. But in the JFS program, it's as little as you possibly want to do. It doesn't have to be the whole shebang. So then I just wanted to highlight 3 nonprofits that we work with at Worcester Area Mission Society too. One is called Worcester Refugee Assistance Project. And this is a group that, again, does a lot of those wraparound services, helps people in transportation if they need it, helps them with jobs, helps them with paperwork and legal stuff. You can actually sign up to be a problem solver, and they will just call you if somebody has a problem, and you just meet one-on-one with the person to solve the problem. If the problem is trying to create a business plan or trying to get enrolled in college, whatever it is, you just help them with that problem, and then you can continue your relationship if you want, but you can also just walk away when the problem is solved. It's kind of a really cool program. I know she is desperate right now for English people to teach English, and she does do an online program that is easy to do. Worcester Rise is a health clinic that has been created. They're really in the middle of being built. They haven't even gotten their physical space yet together. WAMS actually gave them a $10,000 grant this year to buy equipment, and so we're working with them. They are a bunch of doctors that have worked in the healthcare system and realized that there were a bunch of gaps in the system when it came to people who were new arrivals. When you're a new arrival, there are a bunch of requirements. You have to have physicals, you have to have immunizations, you have to have mental health evaluations, you have to have all of these things. and you can only do them in a certain period of time. And all of the clinics are so overwhelmed that people were actually missing deadlines because they just couldn't get into the doctor fast enough to do this stuff. They also are culturally sensitive. So they hire people that have been through the immigration system to work at the clinic and help people.
That's awesome.
They have a prayer room that is culturally sensitive so that people can go in and pray at the different times during the day that they need to pray, right? They focus on the population that has these gaps in the regular system. But their goal is to train, educate, and get them into the US healthcare system, probably the most complicated one in the world, and show them how to use that system going forward if they're permanent residents. And then finally, we have Hospitality Common Inc. I spent an hour with these guys today. They're purchasing, or they're renting to purchase a house in Framingham where they will house 3 to 4 families at a time as a soft landing.
Nice.
Families will come and live in the house for 3 to 6 months and be a community as they go through the initial shock and initial healing of coming to the United States. These houses are around the country. It's an amazing project. I will keep you all updated on its progress. Finally, I just want to mention Jillian again. So the reason that we were able to move so quickly in giving a lot of churches their opportunities to help was because Worcester Area Mission Society already had a relationship with Friendly House. So when Jillian's position came into being, we were able to hit the ground running with her. And she's amazing. So she has set up, the diaper distributions, the TPS clinics. She is connected to every nonprofit and agency in Worcester County that is helping the immigrant population. And she can point you to who needs shelter, who needs TPS, who needs ESL, what's going on. I don't know if anybody knows, but there's an organization in Worcester, a rough network in Worcester called Worcester Together. Of all of the agencies in Worcester, all of the nonprofits, and all of the politicians, they show up for a conference call every other Thursday to talk about the state of the city, including immigration, sometimes public schools, sometimes violence, sometimes youth programs for the summer, whatever. They talk about it every other Thursday. It's amazing. So that's how Jillian's position has been created, and that's what's allowed us to kind of do a lot of the direct aid very quickly in Worcester County. But we've also, as I said, created relationships with SMOC and with JFS. And with CMHA. So we have those connections. And so I welcome you, if you want to help in any way, to let us know. We have a monthly newsletter, and I have some examples of those newsletters on the table if you want to grab them. We've got flyers out here of some of the things that are coming up next. Diaper distributions, a holiday gift distribution, a coat drive, which I think you guys are doing, right? And any of that information. I also have Immigration 101, so a lot of those terms and stuff that we just went over, if you want to grab it, you can have a Immigration 101 here. I just want to close with the community acceptance conversation, just a couple of minutes. We can help people get through this traumatic experience, and we are living in a country where 14% of our neighbors are foreign born, and that has made a lot of people nervous. That has changed some of the conversations that happen in our country. And so for me, to be a leader in the community, to be the church, is to understand that conversation that's happening out there and to understand the state of where we are. and to have that conversation amongst yourselves and to say, what do we want to be in the community when it comes to that conversation? How do we want to be part of that conversation, right? And I just wanted to highlight, you know, this trying to build trusting relationships. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes humility to actually have authentic relationships with many different people in your community. And that's church stuff to me.
Amen.
Safety. Does everyone feel safe in your community? And I don't mean your church community, I mean your broader community. And ways of knowing that, ways of hearing and listening and hearing stories is to go out into the community and ask, right? Schools are great partners. They can tell you what's happening. They can tell you where the weaknesses are. They can tell you where the needs are. But again, you've got to start with trusting relationships, right? They have to trust you before they'll talk to you. Libraries are amazing. The Worcester Public Library holds ESL classes, legal clinics, educational programs. Like, I mean, they're amazing, right? They can be such a great partner in the community to get things done in your town, in your community. Having a good relationship with the police and understanding what they're seeing, what they're hearing, how they're feeling, and how people are interacting with them, and what the opinion of people that are interacting with them, how they feel about it all. It's an excellent conversation to have to make sure everyone feels safe. And housing. Housing. I'm just saying, I live on, you know, an acre zoned parcel of land in the middle of a country road in a house that's too big for me. I know that. I admit that. And it is the American way, right? That's what we think, right? But we have a major housing crisis going on right now.
Yes.
And we can't house the people we need to grow our economy and to have healthy communities.
Yeah.
And it's a conversation.
Yeah.
I don't know what the answers are, but it's definitely a conversation. And then finally, it's honoring our right to live fully. To live together in respect, compassion, and caring for each other. This is where it comes into that little bit of discomfort sometimes that we feel that the world is, that the country is changing, that things aren't the way they used to be, that I'm being confronted by things that make me feel uncomfortable sometimes, right? Someone speaking another language in the grocery store. Haitian Flag Day on our town common. People dressed in ways that don't dress the way I have. People who have religions that I don't have. You know, this is just living together. And again, for me, this is church. This is church answering those, you know, asking those questions and holding those relationships together and making people feel safe and welcome and a child of God.
Yes.
So, unfortunately, I cannot end this presentation with answers. So I will take questions. I know that we're right on time, but if anyone does have any questions, I'm also happy to stay for anybody that just wants to come up and ask me questions or take any of the materials or ask for materials. Yes?
I think for me, because we live in Massachusetts, we feel like we're like taking on the burden from like Texas and Florida, sent everybody up here. So, I mean, are these people being dispersed to like other states? Like, can't they go to Maine and New Hampshire and Vermont? And Vermont will pay you $10,000 if you come to live there.
Yeah, so there definitely is an approach by the state right now that when people approach the shelter system, they counsel them to find a way to divert them. And I don't like that word, but that's what they do. So they have 5 days with a counselor where they try to find solutions other than needing to be in shelter. And a lot of times it is giving them a bus ticket to family outside of the state. They will not just send them to another state with no answers, because that's what we won't do to other people what was done to us.
So
right?
the, like, say Connecticut, Rhode Island, you know, do they have like the same sanctuary type of stuff that we have? Like Worcester has always been a sanctuary city. Okay, it was like that from the 1620s, okay?
Yeah, it's been an immigrant city
Yes,
for sure. Yep.
yes, okay, so are
Because we
there
had the factories.
cities like that in Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, okay?
Absolutely, the cities in those towns are, I mean, Rhode Island, I went to school in Bryant. Obviously, a large Italian population, a large Portuguese population in Italy. It's very much an immigrant state, and Providence is an immigrant city for sure.
So is Manchester.
Manchester,
I grew up in
New
Manchester,
Hampshire,
and
yeah.
we started out.
too,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
Manchester was French Canadian Catholic when I was growing up
Yeah.
there, and then all of, and I've gone back several times because I still have friends there. And it is, one of my best friends was actually a refugee from Lebanon in the early 90s. And there's a huge Lebanese population from the Lebanese Civil War. There's a huge Haitian population now. There's a huge, huge immigrant population in Manchester, New Hampshire. There are huge immigrant populations in Portland, Maine. The question is not, can we send them to other cities? It's that we can't send them to random towns. Because I also lived in Lee, New Hampshire, which is a lovely town. It's more similar to Sterling, Massachusetts than, say, a place from, say, Western Massachusetts. But, like, the further away from a city center you go, the harder it is for those people to access services that they need. It's also more difficult for the populations that are in those smaller towns that are far away from city centers to provide the community acceptance that we're talking about here, because they don't have the exposure to multiple cultures that you do living in Worcester County. You don't have the, you don't have perhaps, I mean, you have the capacity for compassion, obviously everybody does, but you don't necessarily have the exposure therapy to have the compassion to meet the needs of these communities coming in. So it's unfair to the communities you're talking about potentially sending them to, and it's incredibly unfair to the refugees.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, to back that up, there are a lot of refugees in Lewiston, Maine, and some also in Burlington, Vermont. And they need, in addition to services, a lot of public transportation, because they don't tend to come here with cars and licenses. So cities and more densely populated towns tend to be the places where it makes sense to settle them.
And jobs.
And
Yeah,
jobs,
right, yeah.
everybody needs jobs.
Yes, our immigration process is based on jobs. People come to where the jobs are. And as we said, once they get jobs and work, they add to the economy, and we need them. We need them in the economy.
So what kind of jobs are they getting in a city like Worcester?
It depends on what their skill levels are. I mean, some people that are coming have skill, are carpenters, I know doctors, I know lawyers, I know teachers, I know nurses. As we said, the healthcare industry is using a large percentage of the population to fill the gap that they have in their workforce. But if you can't speak English, then you're working at Walmart and you're working at Amazon. Those are the two biggest employers that will hire someone that can't speak English.
But they don't pay enough.
But they need to, but that's why, it's, they need the help, they need the job training so that they can, move on with their life and end this disruption.
Years back in the Industrial Revolution, we made things here. We had Tom McCann's, we made shoes, okay? We had Worcester knitting, we made dungarees, okay? So all those jobs got pushed off to, where, all right? So those trade type of jobs are, there's not a lot of them here.
Yeah, the healthcare industry has replaced that.
Okay.
Even if they come, I did ESL in Maine and Rhode Island, even if they come with a lot of academic knowledge or they're doctors, they can't necessarily walk into our system. I had a pediatrician from Siberia who ended up studying to be a nurse because there was no way she will ever be able to be a doctor here.
Exactly. Yes,
So
yes,
it
there's a
depends
huge
on-
cultural change.
There's a massive change.
Well, the licensing too, you just can't
Oh,
show
yeah.
up, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I just have more of a comment. This is a lot of information, this is like, melting my brain. Can you send these slides to Robin?
I was
Yeah.
gonna say,
that'd be
yeah,
good.
Kind of get them out.
I wanna look at some of those infographics for full size.
Yeah.
Well, we've also got this.
They're videotaping it, aren't they?
Yeah, yes, they are.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
having,
but
having the
you can
slides
have
would
paper,
be,
yep, yep.
thank you.
I think I have a copy, but.
Just one quick question. What's the, from your, from, I'm sure you keep track of this, but percentage-wise, there must be, most of the immigrants, the Haitians come over, most of them end up getting jobs and moving on and having a better life. Would you not say that?
I don't know, I haven't been in this business to say that I know something that's gone on for 10 long-term
But typically they come, they
versions.
wanna work,
You
want
know,
a
but,
better life.
but most certainly, and my experience with families from Haiti especially, they wanna work, they stand there and say, why can't I work? Like, that's what they want to do. And this, as I said, this is a disruption in their life, this is a horrific trauma in their life, and so they're dealing with trauma, and that's gonna take time. And they are trying to figure out this whole other country, this whole other system, this whole other, I mean, it's not just learning the language, right? There's a lot to being in the United States.
You have to think too, I just came back from Canada, I'm originally from Canada, and they get the same issue with, the immigrants, coming from India, Pakistan. Everyone thinks they're taking their jobs, and most of them are just coming over for a better life and working. But of course, they're getting the same, problems in terms of trying to adapt to the life. And so, it's not just here that, it's different countries. Germany's facing the same things.
I was just talking to someone who lived in Mexico for the last 6 months, and she was in Mexico City. And she said, her family is originally from Mexico, and she was like, Mexico City has completely changed. There's Venezuelans, there's, Haitians, there's like, it's become this like international city, and a whole bunch of Americans, because when they could work remotely, they moved to Mexico City.
Yeah.
And so she said she literally went by an apartment building, and there was a poster in one of the windows that said, "Go home, gringo." Like, so we're not the only ones that are dealing with nativism and people feeling uncomfortable that the neighbors around them are changing. We are a small world today. We're not going to get big again. It's not going to take 10 weeks to get across the Atlantic again.
Climate change.
Yeah, because that's a big driver.
We're in this
Syria
together.
thing, and even Myanmar, is that climate change is forcing a lot of refugees.
We're in this together.
We're not getting better anytime soon.
Probably we better wind up, because some people need
Yes,
to know.
absolutely.
But Fran will be here to answer questions if you have them. And if you'd like to get more information, if you'd just like to know what the volunteer possibilities are, if you just take one of these, put your name and your email address on it, then I'll create a list to let you know. Fran puts together a newsletter every month that has all of this in it, but I could call that out and send those to you. So let us know what you're interested in. So these little sheets are up here, and so grab them, take them. It only takes 30 seconds to fill it out. We thank you so much.
Yeah, thank
for
you. We are
ready to tell you about First Church's response of one thing we're gonna do in November. And Becky Gray is our chairperson for a diaper drive.
Mostly I'm the spokesperson. I'm feeling like my job keeps getting bigger. I would use the microphone. So we are running a diaper drive in November. As you see, the dates are the 3rd to the 24th. We're gonna wrap it up Thanksgiving weekend so that we can, we're gonna build like a wall of diapers in the sanctuary, which is gonna be very fun. If you don't wish to run out and buy diapers and bring them here, you don't have to. You can order diapers. You'll have a link of preferred brand that the diaper drive people prefer to work with, and I'll send them right along.
you can send money, because maybe you don't have a situation where you want to be like buying a pack of diapers, maybe it's too much money, but if you send us, $5, $10, whatever, we can buy a group of diapers with a group of money. So feel free to look into our diaper drive. We will be doing that starting not next week, but the following week through the 24th. You can bring diapers by Monday through Friday and Monday through Thursday between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. And then we will
Sunday.
Sunday through Thursday, my bad, yes, you can, not 9 to 3 on Sunday, but like 9 to noon on Sunday would probably be fine. And then 9 to 3, Monday through Thursday, the office is open, we'll be able to receive physical diapers that way. You can order diapers to get shipped, that would be great. You can send money and we can all buy a bunch of diapers to put together, to send to help with the diapers to migrants that we are involved in. So that's one way that we're gonna help as a group right off. So do it. Thank you.
Thanks, Becky.
Woo-hoo!